Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 965, Friday, November the 22nd, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, let's go ahead and get to today's news. Alrighty, so I think at this point, if you've been trying to follow, I know most of us have jobs, we can't sit around and watch these hearings all day long, but I know many of you, probably like myself, try to catch up on that when we get home from work. I spend my entire lunch hour, unfortunately, doing research, and my breaks I do research. I compile most of my research during the day while I'm on break or at lunch, and then I come home and do some work on it as well. And so I think I've followed these hearings as closely as you can if you have a job, and you know, just watching a lot of compilation videos and things and such. And I think that this thing, as I said a couple days ago, really after the Sunderland testimony, I think that was the end of this thing, and it should have been put to a halt. As I said yesterday, this thing cannot last much longer. If some witness doesn't come forward soon to produce some actual evidence of some high crime and misdemeanor, then this is just not going to go. And as I said the day before that I'm not so sure that if they have a vote on impeachment, if they had it yesterday, today, or tomorrow, that they're going to have the votes. Maybe they can twist enough arms to get the votes. But I mean, this thing is over, folks. I mean, unless there's something, unless the bug-eyed fool has some star witness with some documents, with a recorded phone call, with something, some hard evidence, then this thing is over, and it will be an absolute disaster for the Democrats, and particularly for Madam Botox Pelosi. In fact, if this thing crashes and burns the way it looks like it's going to, she may be forced to resign. That's how bad this is. And if in fact further investigation is done and we find that Veneman was the source for the so-called whistleblower, and that was all, this whole thing was organized between Schiff's staff, the lawfare people, Sharamella, and Vendeman, and maybe a couple others in the loop, there's going to be some serious hell to pay for these people, criminally. We just reported a couple days ago that the FBI had requested an interview with Eric Sharamella, and apparently at this point we can only conclude that the lawyers have either refused that interview, or if they did the interview, it's been kept very quiet. But clearly the fact that the FBI decided to get involved tells you that they obviously smell a rat here as well. Now, they don't have to interview Sharamella to be able to investigate this. They can do it without his interview. It's just that would make it much quicker for them. But if they have to do it the hard way, they certainly can. And I hope they do, and I hope they look into this, and I hope when they get to the bottom of it, they expose the truth, because this is just more of the continued coup plot that has never ended. It's just a continuation of the Mueller investigation, to the Ukraine thing, to obstruction, to this, to that. This is just an extension of what's been going on since Trump won the election, and it needs to come to a swift halt. And I'm starting to think that maybe some people at the DOJ and the FBI are starting to figure it out, that that this is not going to go away, and they better not be caught being part of the cover-up. They better be part of the cleanup, or there is going to be hell to pay for those people as well. This thing needs to end. It's a freak show. And we learned today from an article over at Gateway Pundit that the bug-eyed fool has links to two companies that are named in the Burisma U.S.-Ukraine case, which is ongoing over in the Ukraine. And those two companies appear to be BlackRock and Franklin Templeton. So it's not just Schiff. There's other Democrats apparently involved in this sort of thing, and maybe, I think we're finding out why, almost just like in the Mueller investigation, where a big reason for the Mueller investigation was to protect the evidence that could be used against the deep state and to the Democrats and others who are participants. And I think in a lot of ways, this Ukraine hoax investigation, so-called impeachment or inquisition, whatever you want to call it, in a lot of ways is about protecting and controlling the investigation and protecting damaging information that will be damaging to Democrats, such as what we're just learning, or what we've learned over the past couple of days. Now that the authorities in the Ukraine and other international news agencies have been reporting that there really is some problems with the Bidens, the Kerrys, Ukraine, this oligarch, Burisma, money laundering, all sorts of things. John Solomon's done great work on this story. He's sticking to his guns. He's got the documents. He's got the evidence. And he has been wrongly accused of fabricating stories and having it wrong or whatever. And I do hope that we get to the bottom of this, if for no other reason, and there's many reasons, but one is I would like to see John Solomon vindicated. The man's done a lot of work here, and I know it must be very, very difficult to have put in the effort, the time, and the work that he has done to expose this story like a real journalist. And he's one of the few last journalists left on the planet, in my opinion, real journalist. And it's just very sad to sit back and watch John Solomon, who appears to be a good man. I don't know him personally, but he appears to be a good man, an honest man, and a really solid reporter, doing his best to do what a reporter is supposed to do. He's taking all this abuse. It's wrong. And I certainly hope, for a lot of reasons, that this is sorted out, but most importantly, that Solomon should be vindicated and he should be given a Pulitzer. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu has been indicted on bribery and fraud, I believe. Now, I'm not a big fan of Netanyahu. The Israelis have just as bad of a problem with the deep state as we do. They have a bad deep state problem there in Israel. Netanyahu may be the victim of that, or this may be legitimate. Again, I'm no fan of Netanyahu particularly. He's a fighter, I will say that. If he's innocent, I hope he beats the rap. And if he's guilty, I hope they hang him high. So, as I was talking earlier about the Democrats and their disastrous failings, did anybody watch the Democratic debate last night? On Thursday night? Or was it Wednesday night? Yeah. I believe it was Wednesday night. Did anybody watch it? I'm guessing not many of you did. Do any of you care about the Democratic debate that happened 2 days ago? I'm thinking not many of you do. And you would be right along with about 98% of the population in the United States. No one seems to care very much about the Democrat debates or about the Democratic field. They're all losers. There's not a one of them that's even close to being presidential material. They are a disaster. An unmitigated disaster. And none more than quid pro quo Joe. I'm really starting to feel angry toward his family. The fact that if that was my father or grandfather, I would shut him down, man. His family, the fact that they let that man go out there, and even though I don't like Joe Biden, I've never met him personally, he might be a perfectly nice guy, but he's a corrupt son of a bitch, I know that. But I don't like to see anybody, an elderly person like that, go down like he's going down. It's just not right. Regardless of what you think of the man, it's not right to let someone stand there and, I mean, he's clearly struggling mentally. He's not clicking, okay? He's a very elderly guy. He's obviously, his mental faculties are not all together. It's not something probably we should be making fun of. I mean, we all do. It's funny to a certain extent. But in another way, it's not really that funny. In a more serious, view here of the situation, he's an elderly man who's really struggling. His family needs to pull him out of the game. He's not going to be the nominee. And if he is, if somehow by any chance he should be the nominee, he will be so embarrassed, so destroyed. And when he gets on that stage with Trump, if he ever makes it there and he has to do 3 debates with Trump, Trump is not going to have any mercy on him. Why would you subject your grandfather or your husband or your father to something like that? You're going to take a guy who is very quick, who's a professional media guy, who's ruthless in his attacks. Someone like Trump, who's on top of his game, who's an A-lister in this particular business. He will just destroy Joe Biden. And it will not even be funny at that point. It will be funny on one hand, but it will not be funny on the other because it's not fair. It's like, picking a fight with someone with one arm. It's not right. And I really, at this point, I'm beyond. It's not even funny anymore. I'm beginning to get angry because his family needs to pull the hook on this thing. Because last night, the highlight clips that I saw of Joe Biden, he really struggled, and he's into psychobabble. I mean, and I'm surprised other candidates on the stage, people in the news media are. And you can see these other Democrats on the stage, they understand this as well. Now, Cory Booker and Kamala Harris took a couple shots at him, but most of the other people on that stage are looking over there and going, they understand what's going on, and even they don't have the heart to attack the old guy. And he's wide open. He left himself wide open so many times last night that they could have jumped all over him, but most of them did not. And that's because they realize that this is a guy who's really failing mentally, and he shouldn't even be up on this stage. And somebody needs to pull the plug on this thing because it's starting to get really ugly, embarrassing, and sad. Enough already. So it's being reported again today, a little more detail, a more detailed story today in the Washington Examiner, that the FBI is investigating a criminal enterprise in the death of Jeffrey Epstein. And this has been confirmed by the director of prisons. So they are definitely investigating whether or not there was some sort of a criminal enterprise, and we'd be talking about a conspiracy because it's not just something one person could do. One person just didn't pull off the Epstein murder, I guess, if you want to go that far. However you want to look at it. You can use whatever word you want. I don't believe, again, as I've said, it's possible that the cause of death, as it's been explained to us, is possible. It's probably 1 in 1,000, maybe 1 in 10,000, maybe 1 in 100,000, maybe 1 in 1,000,000. I don't know. But I'm telling you, it's a low probability. It's a much higher probability based on all of the other circumstances surrounding Epstein that there was something else going on, meaning foul play. And this is what they're looking into, because it's hard for any rational person to look at the facts of this case and say, yeah, he probably offed himself. I don't think so. And they do need to investigate this deeply. And yes, a criminal enterprise. I think enterprise is one word you could use, but I think criminal conspiracy. Again, the deep state is out of control. The criminal elites are out of control. Ever since Trump got elected, things have just gone completely off the rails. Clearly, he is an enormous threat to the deep state, to the entrenched bureaucracy, to the corrupt so-called ruling elites who've been running a game on us for so very long. And now that party is coming to an end, and they just don't know what to do about it. And things like this are happening. This stuff's been going on for a very, very long time. And I'm really hoping that we are entering into a new era. An era where we finally look back and realize that we stop taking this kind of crap, and that we start pointing these people out, holding them accountable, and getting this thing back on track. It's not just here in the United States. We see what's happening over in the UK with Brexit, how that's what's going on there. We see things all across Europe and around the world. It's time to shut these people down. They've done enough damage. They've been in control for long enough. It's time to put an end to it and to hold these people accountable. the world could be a much, much better place without them running it. Looks like there's some bad news. Dark clouds overhead for the DNC, particularly for Tom Perez. The whisper campaign has already started. The backstabbing has begun. Tom Perez, as far as the Democrat establishment is concerned and the big donors, is a failure. He has failed to deliver. And the number one job of Tom Perez is to raise money. And the Democrats are hemorrhaging. They cannot raise money. They have only got about $7 million in their coffers, and they are in debt $6 million, which means they only have a net positive by $1 million. While at the same time, the Republicans are raising record amounts of money and have about $300 million in the piggy bank, while the Democrats have $1 million. The Democrats will borrow themselves into infinity trying to support or field some sort of a candidate so that they can lose badly to Trump. And I think that that's what they see coming. But I'll tell you one thing about the Democratic Party. The number one job of the head of the DNC is to raise a hell of a lot of money. And if you can't do that, you won't be around very long. Tom Perez is not long for this world. Unless he figures out some way to raise some money in a real hurry. So Deval Patrick, I guess, is Obama's wild card. And they tried to throw him into the mix. He's officially entered the race. He attempted to have a event last night, and they show a picture of the event, and it's an empty hall, which appears to be 200 to 300 seats in the hall. Very nice place, really. And it's empty. So apparently Deval Patrick shows up, and there are 2 people in the room. 2. At which point he said, this is embarrassing. And he got out of there. Canceled the event. But he actually got there. No one even bothered to call him on the phone and say, yeah, Mr. Governor, you probably don't even want to show up here because there's only like 2 people here. It won't look good. Just say you're sick. Say people got the directions wrong. Say people got the date wrong. We'll find something to make to figure out how to excuse this as an accident or something. But needless to say, Deval Patrick is not turning anybody on. He's not the answer to anything in the Democratic Party. It doesn't matter. Deval Patrick doesn't matter. It's a systemic problem with the party that they can't seem to come to grips with. It's all about Trump. They cannot think clearly. Trump has got them completely, caused them to come completely unglued. And they're no longer even rational, and they're no longer even practical about how to recover from losing 2016 and how to move on and get the party moving again. They don't seem to have any ability to do that because Trump has got them so rattled. And one disastrous fail after another, all the stuff that they were involved in 2016, all the stuff that's continued, the coup attempts continue, all the corruption that we're finding out about, and maybe this is why they've all gone batshit crazy. But Deval Patrick is not the answer. I know Obama is concerned. I would be too if I were him. I mean, his legacy is being trashed. He no longer seems to have any ability to control or move the party back to sanity. He puts Deval Patrick in, and we can see that he's not getting any traction. I really don't know where the Democratic Party goes from here, but I think, as is the case with a lot of like alcoholics and people like that, I think sometimes you have to hit rock bottom. And so I think the Democrats are so bad off that they are going to have to hit rock bottom. And believe me, they don't have that much farther to go. They're getting pretty close. Well, I reported to you yesterday that Hunter Biden just discovered that he has a child, another one. He's got 4 previous that he knew about. Now he just found out about another one because he was forced to take a DNA test having to do with an affair that he had with a woman who's from Arkansas, but she was actually working as some sort of a staffer or something in Washington, D.C. That's where the affair happened. And we're learning today that the timing of this, and this is really sick stuff right here, that the timing of this is that this woman, and the child was actually born in 2018, so the child actually has been born. The child was born in 2018, and we're finding out that this child was conceived at the very time that Hunter Biden was dating his recently deceased brother's widow. So Hunter Biden is having an affair with his recently deceased brother's wife, and at the same time he impregnates a young woman from Arkansas who's working in DC as a staffer of some sort of a short affair. And I mean, this is a guy who, left his crack pipe and some crack in a car that he rented, along with his wallet, which had his driver's license and identification in it. He got kicked out of the military for being a crackhead. He's known for having a appetite for picking up prostitutes. I mean, this is a dirtball, man. This guy is a freaking dirtball. And if you start investigating this guy, it's going to look very, very bad. And he's probably just a chip off the old block. I don't even want to know about quid pro quo Joe's past issues, but they do need to get to the bottom of the corruption and get all that sorted out. But one thing here that we should keep in mind, the thing that may actually unravel all of this with Hunter Biden and his finances, his questionable finances, is the fact that now that it's been determined that he is the father of this woman's child, he is going to have to go into court, in a civil court, and they're going to want to see his financials, because his alimony and child support are going to be based on his financials. And that's going to become public because it's a civil court hearing. And so it very, very well may be that his affair with this woman from Arkansas, who was working as a staffer in DC, whom he got pregnant and now has this child with, it may turn out that the civil court hearings about his finances to determine his ability to pay alimony and child support may be the very thing that exposes the financial information, which will become public record, which could actually cause him a lot of problems and really exacerbate the situation that he is currently in, along with his father and now the Kerrys and some other Democrats as well. This could be the thing that really causes this thing to spiral out of control. And that's what you call poetic justice. Lindsey Graham is reporting on Sean Hannity last night that the Horowitz report is coming out on Monday the 9th. Absolutely guaranteed. That's what Lindsey Graham said. I 100% guarantee on Monday the 9th of December the Horowitz report will be released. There has been a preliminary report released already. Haven't had time to get to it. I hope to get to that tomorrow. We have Andy McCabe on CNN telling CNN, the Commie News Network, that there is no deep state. There is no deep state. Well, if we've learned one thing over the past year and a half or two, there's a deep state. Even those who said there wasn't a deep state now admit that there's a deep state. The only one who doesn't appear to know that there's a deep state is Andy McCabe. We had this picture that showed up yesterday of the whistleblower, the fake whistleblower, Sharamella, shaking hands with Obama. Man, when you look at that picture of him shaking hands with Obama, he's a tiny little guy. Is he, 5'4" or something? I mean, he's little. But he's caused a big, big problem, and he may have some very big problems ahead if it turns out that what I suspect is true, that he was part of a plot. And that's exactly what it looks like. So, one of the witnesses yesterday, Fiona Hill, we've already seen some of the transcripts, so we already knew what she was all about. But, of course, her testimony yesterday, certainly, like all these testimonies, just her opinions, her thoughts, her feelings, her secondhand knowledge and all this. She was also a very, very bad witness for the bug-eyed fool and the Democrats. A very bad witness. And she probably, again, like many of these witnesses, does more damage to the Democrats, the deep state, and Joe Biden and all the rest than she could ever do to Trump. So, a couple things. One thing we already talked about before is that Fiona Hill admitted to seeing the dossier the day before it was published. Now we get more details from her about that. She apparently was shown that by Strobe Talbot. Strobe Talbot, of course, is a longtime friend of the Clintons. Served in the Bill Clinton administration, longtime friend of the Clintons. He also was involved in a related way to the Trump Tower meeting with Don Jr., Manafort, Kushner, where they had the Agrilovs and Veselnitskaya and Akhmechin and Goldstone and all those people, which Lee Smith says he believes was a setup by Glenn Simpson of Confusion GPS. That Strobe Talbot had a role in that he met with or had a relationship with one of the people who was privy to this group, who was involved in this and lived in the same building and had a relationship with one of the characters that was involved in knowing some of the plotters of the Trump Tower meeting. So he shows up here and there, but it should also be noted that Strobe Talbot is also Cody Shearer's brother-in-law. Cody Shearer being one of the Right Reverend Clinton's henchmen. We also know that Fiona Hill spoke earlier in a previous testimony about the fact that she knew and had met with Christopher Steele back in 2016. Now, she doesn't give a very good, opinion of her opinion of Christopher Steele is not a very good one, and she basically says that all he ever wanted to do was drum up business for his Orbis intelligence business. He was always trying to do that, and she said that's mostly what her conversation with Steele was in 2016. The conversation was never really about Trump-Russia. I'm not sure if I believe her, but that's what she says. And finally, what should be noted about this fraud, Fiona Hill, is that she wrote an op-ed when she was working for a think tank back in 2015. And the op-ed that she wrote was she was making the case why we should not give arms to Ukraine, because she was afraid that if we give arms to Ukraine, it would only escalate things and cause the Russians to maybe become more aggressive. So here it is. She's the entire time the Obama administration. At this time, she's working at a think tank. She writes this article opposed to giving military aid. So what does Trump do? Trump gives the military aid, which is what the Ukrainians wanted and what most of these other people, ambassadors and various other people we've heard from, say is what they believe was the correct course of action, which Trump actually does. So maybe this is what is motivating her. But she's clearly out of step with a lot of these other people that we heard testify. But despite that, her testimony was ineffective. If it was supposed to be something value to the bug-eyed fool or to the Democrats' case, she was highly ineffective. And there's a lot of questions about her as well. It's hard for me to believe that she, along with all these other people, with their deep knowledge and their close relationship with all these Ukrainian officials and all that was going on in Ukraine, that she would not have known about what was going on with Alexandria Chalupa, with these corrupt Ukrainian officials, and all the rest. I find it very difficult to believe these people were that stupid or that out of the loop or that naive. I just think they're terribly dishonest. Now, we have new information about John Durham's investigation. Let's go ahead and talk about that with the remaining time we have. Okay, the latest on the John Durham investigation. This first story coming to us from Sarah A. Carter. Sarah Carter is reporting that John Durham is now looking into Stefan Halper, the fat man, and he should. Carter reports that Durham is now looking into the Office of Net Assessment. He has questioned many witnesses, more than a dozen in the Office of Net Assessment as he attempts to find out more about what Halper was all about. And so far, what he's finding is not good for Mr. Halper or the deep state. It appears that there's a lot of people very nervous who really don't want to be associated with Stefan Halper. There also is information now coming out that not just Halper himself, who we already know was paid, over $1 million to produce these reports, which we're now finding out they were garbage, that he didn't even write them, that he paid academics to write them, and they weren't even all that accurate or up to date, certainly not worth $1 million. But we're also finding out from these sources that are being interviewed, these witnesses being interviewed by Durham, that this is not just a one-off thing for this Office of Net Assessment, which I think is nothing more than a CIA office buried within the Pentagon, the DOD. It's what this is looking like. Because it's not just Halper's reports. We're now finding out that there's about $20 million that have been paid out by the Office of Net Assessment for these reports, of which we're now finding out from Durham's learning this through his interview of witnesses, that there's about $20 million approximately that the Office of Net Assessment has paid for these types of reports, which they cannot even produce. These reports were never even written. Not all of them attributed to Halper, obviously, but John Durham is finding that there's something very fishy about this Office of Net Assessment. They're spending millions and millions of dollars on reports that never actually, in many cases, never actually even get written, yet the money is paid. Or you get situations like we're learning with Halper, which is that they pay $1 million for what, somebody could have pulled off of Google in a couple of hours. So there's something very fishy. And of course, as I've mentioned to you before, having studied the CIA inside and out, the CIA buries a lot of their programs, a lot of their little inner agencies, and their assets and operatives and officers are buried many times within other agencies of the government. The State Department, the Pentagon, the DOD, Bureau of Land Management. They bury people because it provides great cover for them. It's perfect cover. Because they can say, yeah, I work for the government. Oh, but I work for the State Department, or I work for the Bureau of Land Management. It's a good cover for them to be able to travel, speak to foreign diplomats, speak with academics, speak with all these type of people, and gather information, and also sometimes work as operatives like the fat man Stefan Halper did. He needs to be brought to justice. He's a dirty, dirty dog. They are also looking into, Durham is also looking into the hotel where Papadopoulos was put up. Remember, it was Halper who invited Papadopoulos. He's the one who booked the hotel, a very nice hotel, a 5-star hotel in London. And now they're looking into it because they believe now, for whatever reason, Durham's got some information that that hotel room was bugged. Papadopoulos' room was bugged. And we're also learning that from CNN, the Commie News Network, that Horowitz has passed a criminal referral to Durham on an FBI agent that altered a document related to the 2016 surveillance on Carter Page. A criminal referral has gone out for that individual. I'm telling you, that person is almost certainly either Andy McCabe or Peter's been stroking us. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good night. See you. Bye.